students. I'm very grateful that you are here today. Yay, we got this. And I'll be sharing about the creative process. Now, this is derived from the elements of TED Talks and two particular TED Talks, but we're going to be focusing on one particular TED Talk because of some time constraints. Imagine you are in an organization, or being very new in an organization, or you are in a C-suite or in a conference room. And the way I would imagine this is, or draw it, is being in a fishbowl. So imagine yourself being in a fishbowl and you're like this fish looking from inside to outside. And this image basically represents when you feel like you are stuck and in a fishbowl and dying to share an idea and dying to spread your fins, but you're just unable to do it because you're stuck. You can't go beyond the fishbowl. So meaning in a scenario when you have more to offer, but you just can't go beyond the fishbowl. I'm pretty sure you had that feeling before. So I'd like to talk to you more about creative process. And what comes to mind is that definition by Masterclass that creative processes basically are sets of ideas that continues to grow and progress into a solution. So when you think about creative process, and when you think about, I really like this definition that the professors from Stanford University spoke about, how creative process and how ideas are built. And Jeremy Utley and Perry Klabon spoke about that ideas are new combinations of existing knowledge. So it exists, it's there, but the more we collaborate, the more we're exposed, the more we connect with other people and collaborate and address problems, the more insights that we gain. I'm pretty sure you heard the story of how Airbnb was formed, that very famous Airbnb. You've heard the story of Chesky and Grebia way back in 2007. Oh, not yet, Heather. All right, so let me tell the story. So there was this two guys who moved from New York to San Francisco. And this is a story of the incredible idea of these two guys who basically opened up their homes and rented their house or their apartment, because there was a time in 2007 when there was this huge conference happening in San Francisco, but there was no available accommodation and housing. So what they did was they opened their homes, and basically that was an idea that how it all started with Airbnb. Today, Airbnb is a 66.62 billion company. One thing great about this is that great ideas often involve looking for a solution to a common problem. Another story is the dash door. How many of you use dash door? But let me tell you a backstory of the dash door. It's actually started in Stanford University, when these four guys who frequent a macaroon place, a bakery, and the owner asked, you know what? I was thinking about an idea of how we can deliver bakery goods to students in Stanford, maybe using an application. So that conversation sparked an idea, and that this four individuals from Stanford University created that application called that now makes what dash door is all about. So basically, what I'm trying to drive in here is that it really starts with empathy and clearly defining the problem and understanding that problem. And sometimes what it requires you is to really understanding the user and understanding the customer. Now, the TED talk that I would recommend you to watch is by Tanya Douglas. And Tanya Douglas is basically spoke about understanding the context of the problem. So just a little bit of background. Tanya Douglas is an engineering professor at a Cape Town University in Africa. And Tanya Douglas delivered a moving and a very inspirational talk on the context of technology. She discussed passionately how important it is to understand your user. And sometimes, we're so biased about jumping into a solution right away. And we will say, okay, well, this is a solution that we should build or create in order to solve that particular problem. Tanya really encouraged us to go deeper in understanding the need of the user, the customer, and that is very important. My takeaway on Tanya Douglas' talk is that her idea about empathy is at the heart of every innovation, and that it's so universal. You really need to understand your user, and understanding them is sometimes would really mean being in their shoes, right? Understanding their needs in order for you to design a solution. So let me ask you a question in chat, if you're still here with me, is that how do you strive to understand the context to clearly define a problem? How do you do that? So again, let me repeat that question. If you could put into chat, how do you strive to understand the context to clearly define the problem? Now, this TED Talk is by Tanya Douglas, Understanding the Context. This is around designing technology. All right, so Christopher is saying by listening, by shadowing. Absolutely, great answer. What else? How do you understand the context? Ask questions. Absolutely. Thank you, Heather. And I think one important thing too that I've learned from experience, and Lisa, yes, talk to people, is by really being interested to people's to people's problems. And what I've learned too, that every problem is an idea problem. So when you're interested about the problem, what you do is basically you kind of open up your curiosity, open up doors, open up in understanding the need. One example was be an anthropologist. As an anthropologist, it's like when you're visiting a new country and you become an anthropologist, meaning you explore, and it requires a mind that is open to understanding the culture, open to understanding the people that lives in the country. And I would advise is when you explore and understanding the context, is that empty your cup. You're coming in, empty your cup and make room for new information and new learning. So another question I have for you there. Exactly, David. Some ethnographic techniques. I agree with you. And I would like to ask you a follow-up question around understanding your problem and also, being in the shoe of the user that you're designing the solution. Is there a time when you became totally immersed in a problem to better understand the context? An example of this is what I shared in my video, is about going to the fish market in South Korea to understand really what is that, what is it like, understanding people, the way they deal with businesses, and being able to understand, and there's a lot of chaos and noise around that environment, but still you're able to observe and watch people as they deal, as they do that particular transaction. Christopher, yes, you see here, often the issue and culture of what I am designing and learning to solve takes over my world. Wonderful. And I can relate to that, absolutely. And sometimes it's like sleepless nights, right? Another TED talk where elements of creative process has been captured, and this is by Phil Hansen, TED talk, which is around embracing the shake. So Phil Hansen delivered this TED talk way back in 2013. And when you get a chance, it's a short 8-minute TED talk that is so inspiring. And a little background: he was diagnosed with a some neurological disadvantage that has something to do with his hands, and so he just keeps on having this uncontrollable shake when he draws. So basically, what he said is that, embrace the shake, embrace your constraints, work around the limits, and be limitless. So Phil Hansen captured 3 important aspects around how do you overcome constraints, embracing the constraints, also about being vulnerable. So I would like to ask you a question around constraints, because we all experience this in organizations, in the way we manage projects, project management, is how do you go about, in chat, how do you go about identifying constraints when solving problems? So again, I'm going to repeat that question. How do you go about identifying constraints when you are solving problems? Okay, Lisa, you were saying you start with the big ones: budget and time. Betty said listening and inquiring with others. Betty, can you go off microphone? Is there a way Betty can go off microphone? So while we're waiting for Betty, Betty has identified the way she overcomes the constraint is listening and inquiring from others. And it's so important to really early on to identify. And I think my follow-up question will be is, so how did you go about pivoting? So when you've identified that there's actually constraints on, say, a project. There's Betty. Hi, Betty. Welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you loud and clear.
I guess where I was just saying with the inquiring and listening is just trying to get a better understanding. If we just think we know what the problem is, we're very narrow-minded and not getting all perspectives from what we may see as a question or a hurdle or a issue may not be for others, or there's many others that we're not seeing.
Absolutely. And we do get that bias where we sometimes say, you know what, I know a solution right away. We're just so solution oriented that we think there's only one solution to a problem.
Right.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I just think the importance of hearing other voices and for one to and also gain involvement from everyone. You get the buy-in that way.
Thank you so much for your gracious feedback and also your time today. Really appreciate.
No, thank you.
And Galen also posted in chat that understand the facts, rules, constraints, and then clarify the why. Absolutely. And creative solution is needed. So I'd like to also ask you about being vulnerable. And sometimes the vulnerability allows us, when we're creating solution, and there are times when we need to pivot or fail or experience these constraints. So being vulnerable, and when a time you had to embrace failure to create something new. Can anyone share or type in chat an example where when you had to embrace failure to create something new in the work that you do in your organization or on a project. I think it's really a learning process as we go through designing, understanding a problem, designing a solution, and celebrating pivot. Yes, absolutely. And again, it's just so important that when we go through this creative process journey, it's so important to be able to bring people with you in the journey, because it is a lot. It's a lot better to feel that you're not alone, as opposed to and having a team or a group of people cheering on you. And it's just an awesome feeling to be able to work on a project, and again, building a community. And my experience is TEDx, and bringing TEDx and organization has been very helpful to bring the community with you in the journey.
If you do have any questions, any insights, any thoughts that you want to share, or questions that you want to ask, go ahead and pop them into chat.
Guys, I'm not going to hold you long anymore, but I've written in chat the 5 elements of the creative process. And we heard Tanya, we heard Phil Hansen. And again, these are amazing TED Talks. Number 1 is defining the problem, being very clear with the problem. And sometimes that how might we is so useful to add in every problem that you are looking to solve. So how might we redesign the airport experience in whichever country or city you are, say in Boston, because that's where I am. Exercise empathy, staying flexible, clearly defining the constraints, and being able to pivot and seizing limitation. So thank you again for your generosity, for your time today. And thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of the conference.